What if I told you that your thoughts aren't as private as you think? That someone right now could be reading your mind without you even realizing it? Sounds scary, doesn't it? But the truth is that mental communication can be more real than we imagine. Since we were children, we learned that our mind is a closed territory, inaccessible to anyone. But what if this was just a myth? Studies and experiments indicate that our consciousness may be linked to an invisible network where thoughts, emotions, and intentions can be transmitted without a single word. Now, imagine if you could access this ability, knowing what someone thinks before they even speak. Identify lies, predict hidden intentions, create instant connections with anyone around you. What once seemed like science fiction may be a dormant ability within you, waiting to be awakened. But be careful. Mastering this ability is not for everyone. There are forces that don't want you to discover this secret, and perhaps after hearing this, you will never see the world the same way again. Welcome to the Eye of the Soul channel. The human mind has always been a mystery. Since ancient times, there have been reports of people claiming to have the ability to feel what others think, or to communicate without words. Jacobo Grinberg. He dedicated his life to studying this possibility and proposed that human consciousness is not isolated, but rather interconnected by an invisible network. This idea challenges the traditional view that our thoughts are private and inaccessible to others. This mental interconnection would be a natural ability, but repressed by social conditioning. Society teaches us from an early age that our mind is an individual closed space. However, there are several common experiences that suggest otherwise. For example, have you ever thought about someone and, shortly afterwards, they sent you a message? Or knowing exactly what someone was about to say? These experiences may be signs of active, albeit unconscious, mental communication. Grinberg believed that this type of phenomenon is not a coincidence, but rather a reflection of the network of consciousness that connects all minds. In addition to the philosophical and spiritual tradition, science also suggests that thought may have a greater scope than we imagine. Neuroscience studies indicate that the brain operates in frequency patterns that can transcend physical limitations. Brainwaves, like those emitted during deep meditation, demonstrate synchronicity between individuals, reinforcing the idea of a possible mental connection. If these frequencies can interact, then it would be plausible to admit that thoughts and emotions can also be transmitted without the use of language. This perspective paves the way for a new way of understanding the human mind. Rather than an isolated entity within the brain, the mind can be seen as part of a larger network of shared consciousness. This concept completely changes the way we understand communication, intuition, and even reality. By recognizing this interconnection, we could develop new ways of perceiving and interacting with the world around us. But if this ability really exists, why can't we use it easily? The answer may lie in the process of learning and adapting to society itself. From a young age, we are taught to rely only on verbal and rational communication, leaving aside the subtle signs of intuition. However, this ability could be rescued and improved with training and awareness. Thus, the study of telepathy and mental interconnection is not just speculation, but a concrete possibility that can transform the way we relate to others in the world. From childhood, we all have intuitive experiences. A common example is when we feel like someone is watching us, or we predict what a person is going to say before they even speak. However, as we grow up, we learn to ignore these perceptions. Society teaches us to value only verbal communication and rational logic, dismissing any other type of perception as mere coincidence or imagination. This conditioning makes us lose sensitivity to capture signals from the environment and people around us. This blockage occurs because we are taught to trust only what can be concretely proven. Children who talk about their intuitive experiences are often discouraged by adults, who attribute these accounts to fantasy or a lack of understanding of reality. Over time, repeating this type of response causes the child to stop paying attention to their perceptions. Thus, the natural intuitive potential that we all possess ends up being suppressed even before we can fully develop it. Furthermore, modern life contributes to this distancing from intuition. Excessive digital stimuli, such as social media and Constant notifications keep our attention always focused outward, preventing us from noticing what is happening internally. Dependence on technology also takes us away from face-to-face interactions and reduces the practice of attentive observation of others. As a result, we become less sensitive to facial expressions, tones of voice, and small changes in energy in the environment, key elements of intuitive perception. The belief that thought is something isolated also reinforces this blockage. Most people believe that their thoughts are completely private and inaccessible to others. This view limits the exploration of a possible mental connection between individuals. If, on the contrary, we were taught from an early age that our mind is interconnected with others, perhaps we would develop intuitive abilities more easily. However, the current model of Western teaching and culture reinforces the separation between people, making this perception difficult. Even with all these barriers, it is possible to rescue and strengthen intuition. The first step is to recognize that we have been conditioned to ignore it. From this understanding, we can start paying more attention to the signals we pick up on a daily basis. This includes trusting first impressions about someone more, noticing patterns in our perceptions, and questioning whether certain gut feelings really are mere coincidences. With practice and awareness, it is possible to reverse this blockage and recover this natural ability that is part of the true nature of the human mind. Communication is one of the pillars of human coexistence, but it often fails to accurately convey what we really feel or think. Even using words, gestures, and facial expressions, misunderstandings are common. Small variations in tone of voice or word choice can completely change the meaning of a message. As a result, the true intentions behind what is said are not always understood correctly, which can generate conflicts and distance between people. In modern society, the situation becomes even more complicated due to the advancement of digital communication. Most interactions take place through text messages, emails, or social networks, which do not convey essential elements of communication, such as tone of voice and body language. This makes the connection between people more superficial, reducing the ability to perceive hidden emotions or intentions behind written words. Often, a simple sentence can be interpreted in different ways, depending on the emotional state of the receiver. Another problem is that by relying exclusively on spoken or written language, we stop paying attention to communication signals. Small details such as changes in gaze, facial micro-expressions, or changes in the energy of an environment can reveal a lot about what someone is really feeling. However, a lack of attention to these signals reduces our ability to understand others on a deeper level. This makes us more prone to hasty judgments and misinterpretations. Difficulties in communication are not limited to social interactions. In personal and professional relationships, the lack of real connection can generate frustration and difficulties in understanding. Many arguments and disagreements occur because people cannot express their feelings clearly or because they cannot understand what the other person really wants to say. If there were a more direct way to understand the thoughts and emotions of those around us, many of these difficulties could be avoided. The human mind has the ability to access information beyond words, and this ability could significantly improve communication. By developing greater sensitivity to pick up on non-verbal cues and strengthening intuition, we could reduce misunderstandings and establish deeper connections. The secret to this lies in paying attention and practicing more conscious communication, where we not only listen to the other person's words, but also seek to understand the intention and emotion behind them. The idea that we can communicate without words may seem supernatural, but Jacobo Grinberg argued that this process is, in fact, completely natural. He believed that the human mind is part of a network of consciousness where thoughts and emotions can be shared directly. According to this view, telepathy is not a mystical phenomenon, but rather an inherent ability of the human being which can be trained and developed. Just as we learn to speak and write, we could also learn to perceive and interpret mental communication. One of the main obstacles to this perception is the belief that we can only communicate through the physical senses. From an early age, we are taught to trust only what can be seen, heard, or touched. However, there are many everyday experiences that suggest that our minds can capture information without using the conventional senses. For example, many people have felt a strong intuition about someone even without exchanging words, or noticed a change in the environment without knowing exactly why. These moments may be signs that mental communication happens all the time. Furthermore, scientific research has already demonstrated that the human brain works through patterns of electromagnetic waves. These waves can synchronize between individuals, particularly in states of deep meditation or when two people share a strong emotional connection. This suggests that the mind can operate at a level that transcends physical space. If the brain can generate and capture these patterns, it is possible for mental communication to happen as an exchange of information beyond spoken language. Another important point is that this form of communication does not negate the importance of traditional language, but can serve as a powerful complement. In situations where words are insufficient to express complex feelings or thoughts, intuitive perception can help to better understand the other person. This can be especially useful in close relationships, where we often understand what the other person feels without them having to say anything. By accepting this possibility, we could improve our empathy and strengthen our interpersonal relationships. The first step to accessing this ability is to question the conditioning that makes us disbelieve in it. If we begin to observe our own experiences more closely, we may notice that we already pick up on intuitive information frequently. With training and awareness, we can expand this perception and make mental communication real in our daily lives. This is a dormant capacity that can be rescued, bringing a new level of understanding and connection between people. Jacobo Grinberg not only theorized about mental communication, but also dedicated his life to scientific research to better understand consciousness and its possibilities. He sought to unite knowledge from neuroscience, psychology, and spirituality to investigate whether the human mind could really connect beyond physical barriers. Unlike many scholars who dismissed telepathy as unlikely, Grinberg developed controlled experiments to rigorously test this possibility. One of the most notable experiments involved mental synchronization between two people. In a controlled environment, he monitored the brain activity of individuals who practiced meditation and were emotionally connected. Even when physically separated, these participants' brainwave patterns showed signs of synchronicity. This suggested that the mind could operate at a level of connection beyond physical space, something that traditional science had not yet fully explained. In addition to brain measurements, Grinberg also studied the influence of intention on mental communication. He observed that when one person focused intensely on conveying a thought or emotion to another, the other person was more likely to pick up on that information intuitively. These findings reinforced the idea that mental communication can be strengthened through practice and training. This hypothesis challenged traditional conceptions of psychology and neuroscience, opening space for new ways of understanding the human mind. Another fundamental aspect of the research was its connection with spiritual and shamanic traditions. He saw similarities between the reports of spiritual masters and the phenomena observed in their experiments. Many ancient cultures already talked about the interconnection of minds and the possibility of perceiving information without using conventional senses. Grinberg sought to investigate these practices with a scientific eye, trying to identify patterns that could be explained objectively. Although his research was groundbreaking, it was also not without controversy. Many scientists at the time considered his ideas too radical, as they challenged the dominant materialist paradigm. However, the experiments opened new doors to understanding consciousness and continue to be debated to this day. His work showed that the mind can be much more than just a product of the brain, suggesting that mental communication is a real skill that can be studied and improved. Grinberg developed the synthetic theory, a revolutionary proposal to explain the relationship between consciousness and reality. According to this theory, the reality we perceive is not something fixed and independent of us, but rather the result of an interaction between the mind and a universal energetic field. In other words, the world around us would be shaped by the way our consciousness processes information. This means that we not only react to reality, but also actively construct it. The mind is not confined to the brain, but is part of a larger network of consciousness. This idea challenges the traditional concept that thinking is an isolated phenomenon within each individual. According to synergic theory, all minds are interconnected, and this connection influences both our perception and our capacity for mental communication. Thus, what we experience as reality can be a collective construction that depends on the way each person interprets and interacts with this energetic field. To understand this theory, Grinberg studied altered states of consciousness, such as those induced by deep meditation and spiritual practices. He noticed that in these states, people reported experiences of oneness with the universe and an expanded perception of reality. These accounts coincided with descriptions from ancient spiritual traditions, which speak about the interconnectedness between all things. The synergic theory sought to explain these phenomena in a scientific way, suggesting that the mind can access deeper levels of reality when it reaches certain vibrational states. Furthermore, Grinberg explored the relationship between his theory and the ancestral knowledge of shamans and indigenous peoples. In his research, he found similarities between descriptions of shamanic practices and the findings of modern neuroscience. Many ancient traditions talk about the existence of an energy field that connects everything, something that resembles the concept of a synergistic field. He believed that this ancient knowledge could be integrated into science to expand our understanding of consciousness and the nature of reality. Synergic theory questions the conventional view that the brain simply records reality as it is. Instead, the perception of the world is the result of the interaction between consciousness and this universal energetic field. This opens up fascinating possibilities for understanding phenomena such as telepathy, intuition, and even the manifestation of reality through thought. If the mind truly influences the reality around us, then we could explore ways to train this skill to improve our communication and connection with others. Human consciousness operates at different vibrational frequencies, and these mental states directly influence our perception of reality. According to this view, each thought and emotion generates a specific vibration which can affect both our mind and the environment around us. Elevated states of mind, such as peace, gratitude, and love, create higher frequencies, facilitating connection with other minds and the consciousness network. On the other hand, emotions such as fear, anger, and stress generate lower vibrations, making this expanded perception difficult. The relationship between mental state and vibrational frequency can be observed in various spiritual and scientific practices. Studies on meditation, for example, show that people who reach a state of deep relaxation have more synchronized and balanced brain waves. This suggests that by changing our internal frequency, we can alter how we connect with the world and others. Grinberg saw this ability as a way to access mental communication and expand the perception of reality. Furthermore, the type of information we consume on a daily basis influences our vibrational frequency. Negative news, constant conflicts, and toxic environments can trap us in low vibrational states, reducing our intuitive sensitivity. Likewise, surrounding yourself with positive content, practicing gratitude, and cultivating constructive thoughts helps to raise this frequency. By maintaining a higher mental state, we are able to notice subtle signs and strengthen our mental connection with others. Another essential factor is the energy of the environments and people around us. Has it ever happened that you enter a place and feel a heaviness in the air, even though you don't know exactly why? This may be a reflection of the vibrations emitted by that space or by the people present. Consciousness is sensitive to these influences and can intuitively capture information. If we are aware, we can notice when an environment or person is vibrating at a lower frequency and take steps to protect ourselves from these negative influences. By learning to regulate our vibrational frequency, we could improve our quality of life and strengthen intuitive communication. In this way, we not only gain a clearer perception of reality, but we also become more receptive to mental communication and interconnection with other minds. Mental communication is a natural skill that can be developed with practice and awareness. The human mind already has the ability to capture information beyond the physical senses. But this perception is blocked by social conditioning. The good news is that there are ways to train this skill and regain sensitivity to detect signals. Some simple practices can help with this process and strengthen our intuitive connection with others. One of the first steps is the development of self-awareness. Being aware of your own emotional and mental state is essential to understand how the mind influences reality. Negative emotions, such as anxiety and fear, can hinder intuitive communication, while elevated feelings, such as calm and gratitude, amplify this perception. Observing your own thoughts and learning to regulate your emotions is a fundamental exercise to improve this connection. Another important practice is filter the information consumed. Everything we absorb on a daily basis, such as news, movies, music, and social media, affects our mental vibration. Constantly exposing yourself to negative or chaotic content can reduce intuitive sensitivity. Therefore, it is useful to better select what we consume, opting for information that promotes balance and well-being. This helps maintain a more receptive state of mind to pick up signals and strengthen mental communication. A full presence in interactions is also essential. We are often distracted when talking to someone, thinking about other things or focused on our cell phone. This prevents us from noticing important details, such as facial expressions, changes in tone of voice, or small variations in the energy of the environment. Training mindfulness and truly engaging in conversation improves connection with others and increases the ability to pick up on unspoken intentions. It's important to avoid negative influences. Some people and environments can drain energy and reduce our intuitive awareness. Being in places with a lot of tension or surrounded by constantly negative people can make mental communication difficult. Seeking quiet spaces, maintaining contact with nature and cultivating healthy relationships are ways to protect and strengthen this ability. By integrating these practices into everyday life, anyone could improve their ability to perceive and mentally connect with others. The human mind is constantly taking in information beyond what we consciously perceive. Small cues like body language, tone of voice, and the energy of a room provide clues about what's going on around us. However, the excessive focus on rationality and verbal communication causes much of this information to go unnoticed. By training attention and developing intuition, we could better perceive these subtleties and connect more deeply with others. Intuition, and very powerful to understand reality. We often feel like something is right or wrong before we even have a logical explanation for it. These premonitions don't come out of nowhere. They are based on information we capture subconsciously. However, due to our social conditioning, we tend to ignore these sensations and give more importance to rational thinking. Learning to trust intuition more helps us access a deeper level of perception. Mindfulness is another fundamental element in this process. Often, we are so distracted by worries or external stimuli that we don't notice the details of what's happening around us. Practicing being present in the moment, closely observing people and environments, allows us to capture information that we would normally ignore. Small changes in someone's facial expression or an unexpected feeling when entering a place can reveal much more than words spoken directly. Practices like active listening and others' silent observation. They also help improve perception. Instead of just waiting for our turn to speak during a conversation, we can focus entirely on what the other person is expressing, both verbally and emotionally. Likewise, taking moments to observe an environment without judgment or distractions can reveal information that would normally go unnoticed. These techniques expand our ability to capture unspoken intentions and strengthen intuitive communication. The quality of attention we give to the world defines the level of connection we can achieve with others. The more we train our perception and trust in intuition, the easier it becomes to understand people on a deeper level. Grinberg believed this skill could transform our daily interactions, making communication more effective and reducing misunderstandings. Developing this awareness allows us to live in a more connected way, both with ourselves and the world around us. The idea that we can read another person's mind challenges everything we have learned about reality and about ourselves. But, as we have seen, This is not just a conspiracy theory or a conjuring trick. It is a real possibility based on studies on consciousness, perception, and mental interconnection. Jacobo Grinberg dedicated his life to proving that our thoughts are not as isolated as we believe, and that, with training and awareness, we can access this ability naturally. What does this mean for our daily lives? It means that we are immersed in an invisible communication network without even realizing it, that each environment carries information beyond what the eyes can see, that our emotions and intentions can be felt by those around us, even without words. And more than that, it means we have untapped potential to understand and connect with others on a deeper level. But this is not a skill to be used anyway. Understanding the human mind requires responsibility. It is not about manipulating or invading other people's thoughts, but about developing greater sensitivity to capture what is beyond verbal language. The more we refine this perception, the more we can avoid misunderstandings, strengthen our relationships, and even predict situations before they happen. The question that remains is, are you willing to expand your perception and see reality in a completely new way? The answer could change everything. If you've made it this far, you've already taken the first step. Now, the choice is yours. Continue ignoring this potential, or start awakening an ability that can transform the way you see the world.